up a daily fantasy. His number too high, then I'm probably fading him. He been on the road, he gon' eat up my salary. I hit up by, he gon' lie before lock. Play back to back, then I probably won't pick on the Dfs Bachelor, good as it gets. Build a few liners and hit me a leg. He had a good game, but it might be a trick. Log in the Slack so I know who to pick. Sharing our liners, we all gon' get rich. New to this game, you should come to the pad. You might want some cash and get a good laugh. Dfs Sports, we gon' run up a bag. He heard every game and it's making me mad. You buying your lineups, I think you a cheater. Dfs Bachelor, he the new leader, yeah.
What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Bachelor Pad. I, of course, am your host of Dfs Bachelor, and we're going to go over our final look for Week 1's main slate, the 12-game main slate for the NFL season on both Fanduel and Draftkings. We're going to cover every position, wide receiver, cornerback matchups, the whole 9 yards, just like we have always done. First things first, a big cheers to you all. Thank you all so much for making me a part of your day. It's truly humbling. The response and the growth of this show over the years and what's happening now. I really appreciate it. Thank you all so much. Thank you to everyone for liking the video. That helps me more than you know, so I appreciate you doing that. Also, by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and leaving a comment in the comment section, you qualify for our weekly $25 PayPal giveaway. And we actually have a $50 PayPal giveaway right now to announce. Sponsored by my friends over at Tax Relief Advocates. And again, I can't stress this enough, man. These guys bailed me out. If you have, it doesn't matter what debt you have to the IRS, or if you're like me and you're getting charged for your ex-wife's tax bills and you need help, these are the guys to call. The phone number is right here on your screen, 1-800-411-9633. They will make that shit disappear like Randall Cobb did for most of the night. Last night, but football was back. It was a great night, right? My bets hit, Chiefs -9, and the over snuck by, so things were good. So be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new as well, because we do lots of stuff. So before I forget, let's announce our $50 PayPal giveaway winner. It's NetGuru Inc. So NetGuru Inc., hit me up on Twitter. Let me know what that PayPal information is, and we'll get that sent to you. A big thanks again to my friends over at Tax Relief Advocates. TRA guys, man, they got it done for me. Saved me a shit ton of money this year. Also, don't forget to check out Overlay DFS. Ton of fun over there. They have the new matchup screen. It's a lot of fun where you can parlay bets on players with over or minus numbers. It's a lot of fun. I've had a ton of success over there. Great group of guys. Customer service is through the roof. If you have scoring errors or player errors, they'll refund you. They're not sitting there and keeping your entries. Just a great group of people. So go over to overlaydfs.com. Hit them up at overlaydfs. Ask them about their first deposit bonus. I know this intro is long, but we have lots of stuff to get to. As usual, my entire player pool, research tools, cheat sheets. I have my top 10 wide receiver cornerback matchups, my 10 worst wide receiver cornerback matchups, Week 1 PPR rankings, all here on Draft Dashboard. You can get access to this tool, the research tools, my player pool for every sport, baseball, football, basketball, all here on one screen. You can click that link in the video description below, try it for 30 days for $1, and you get my player pool. And if you love the intro to this song, our guy, Young Ali, just released a new album, and I love that intro. I love this dude. I love his music. There will be links in the video description below to download his new album on Apple iTunes and Spotify. And for those of you who have been getting asked for years, can you please do a live show? Well, live shows are going to be here Sunday morning. I will be over at Sportsbook Review. I will have a link to that YouTube channel Sunday morning, 1 hour before kickoff. So noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific time. We'll be live for an hour. You can ask us all your questions, closing betting lines, DFS questions, fantasy football, stardom, sit-em questions, whatever you want to do. Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, over at Sportsbook Review. So lots and lots of stuff that we have going on. So be sure to check it all out. I think that's all the house cleaning, and I apologize for the long intro. It's just there's a lot going on with the show. We're pretty blessed over here. And for those of you asking, yes, we're still safe. The smoke is barreling in. There are a lot of fires around us. But right now, where I sit, everything is cool. So thank you all for the consideration there as well. So let's get started. Let's start right at the top. Quarterback. We got Lamar Jackson. 8-1 on DraftKings, 9,300 on Fanduel. Very expensive. But of course he's in play. huge upside. You're getting the rushing floor, so you have a nice, safe floor. You know he's going to be heavily involved in the running game. I think the passing game is going to be even more efficient this year. He's just having more and more time to get used to that offense. So I'm going to have plenty of exposure to him. Now, it's expensive, and I typically like to pay down at quarterback, but, it's week 1, so there's a lot of unknowns. So I'm going to have a spread out player pool. Things are going to be spread out. I'll be spread eagle, baby. And I like Lamar Jackson. Russell Wilson, of course. Now, sometimes Russell Wilson can be frustrating. Last year against Atlanta, he put up a 16. It seems like it's always close games. I think that this game has a nice high total of 49, just above that 48 for Baltimore and Cleveland. He's 7K on DraftKings, 8-4 on Fanduel. We know he's got the rushing upside as well. I think this game has shootout potential, so I like both he and Matt Ryan in this contest. Last year, Atlanta was 25th against opposing quarterbacks. Drew Brees at home, of course. Now, the one concern with Drew Brees, and they're playing against a terrible Tampa Bay secondary that did absolutely nothing to improve their secondary during the offseason. Now, they improved their offense. In some people's eyes, they're going to turn the ball over less. The one frustrating thing about Drew Brees is the red zone situation. Taysom Hill oftentimes will come in those red zone packages. So that does sort of make him more of a tournament play only for me. But Drew Brees at home, fans are not in that Superdome. You got to love Drew Brees. Josh Allen. Absolutely. Love the rushing floor. He's 6'5 on DraftKings, 7'9 on FanDuel. I love the price for Josh Allen. He's going to run the ball in the red zone. He put up a 20 in his one game against the Jets last year. The Jets defense got worse in the offseason, obviously, with the loss of Jamal Adams. I like Josh Allen quite a bit this week. I'm probably going to stay away from Tom Brady. I know people are going to be inclined to play him, and he could have a good game. I just think that Saints secondary is tough. Mike Evans, it looks like he's going to play. I just think there's some better options. Even Kyler Murray against the 49ers. Now, that 49ers defense is mean. There's no doubt about it. But again, another quarterback with a nice floor with that rushing upside. He put up a 23 and a 27 in the 2 games last year against the 49ers. So you expect him to progress a little bit. DeAndre Hopkins is now there. Kyler Murray could be a nice tournament play this week. Carson Wentz against what should be a bad Washington team. They were 24th last year against opposing quarterbacks. He put up a 28 and a 23 in his 2 games against Washington last year. You're getting him at 6-3 on DK and 7-7 on FanDuel. Some value-ish guys. I'm meh on Cam Newton. I certainly think there's some rushing upside in the red zone. I just kind of want to see what we get out of him. So I'll have some light exposure to Cam Newton. Aaron Rodgers didn't put up huge numbers against the Vikings last year. I do think he has a chip on his shoulder this year. We'll just have to wait and see. I think Teddy Bridgewater is an interesting tournament option against a bad Raiders secondary, really young Raiders secondary. He's 5'9 and 6'8". Jimmy Garoppolo had 2 huge games against Arizona last year, a 35 and a 32. Arizona allowed the most fantasy points in the league to opposing quarterbacks. Obviously, we know they struggle against tight ends. They were the pink eye kings last year, struggling against those tight ends. It was historically bad. I'm a little concerned about the wide receiver core right now for the 49ers. Will Deebo Samuel be active? How is Brandon Ayuk's hamstring injury coming along? He's 5'8 and 7'3". You could certainly go there. I don't have a problem with it. Not a high-volume passing team, so you need him to throw those touchdown passes, which he did against this team last year. Gardner Minshew, I think, is a very interesting value option. I just think Jacksonville is going to be playing from behind all year long. They have absolutely no one in the backfield. I mean, it's going to be Chris Thompson and Devin Azigbo, and I think Raekwon Armstead's even going to be out. I've heard nothing about him even being there. So they're going to throw the ball 50 times. He's 5'8". On DraftKings, 6'7" on FanDuel. I'm going to have exposure to Minshew. Minshew Mania, baby. I'm in. Some other value guys. I mean, Kirk Cousins is cheap, 5'7". I could consider that. Tyrod Taylor has a nice rushing floor against the Cincinnati defense that probably won't be very good. Now, for me, if I'm paying down here, I'm going to Mitchell Trubisky, and I know how bad he is, but Detroit's secondary, not good. They lost Darius Slay. They were 28th last year against opposing quarterbacks. They did bring in Desmond Trufant and drafted the rookie Jeff Okudah, of course. But Mitchell Trubisky in his last 3 games against the Lions has thrown for over 289 yards a game and 3 touchdowns per game. He's got some rushing upside. When he runs, when he uses his legs, he's got big upside. He's 5'4 and 6'9". Right now, I've made about 10 Millionaire Maker lineups, and I have 2 of them with Mitchell Trubisky right now. I can't help myself. It's too cheap, and it allows me to pay up at other positions where there's just not a ton of value everywhere this week. It seems like the pricing is pretty stingy this week. And again, those things will start opening up as the season progresses, and there'll be some surprises and like, oh, this guy's actually going to be good, and oh, this guy's not even part of the offense. That shit's going to happen. It's week 1, so just keep that in mind. Let's go to running back. Christian McCaffrey, of course. Like, do I need to say more? Huge upside, huge usage rate. Now, you should see some regression in that. You could see last year he played on 93% of the offensive snaps. You can find that stat right here on Draft Dashboard, by the way. That'll be updated all season long. It's really handy when you're trying to go through and kind of sort out your mind. Cheers to you all. It's definitely a coffee and Bailey's type of morning. But Christian McCaffrey, he's going to be in play every week. He's going to be involved in the passing game. You saw his last 3 games, even last year. Over 10 targets each of the last 3 games. Carries, everything else. Christian McCaffrey, very expensive. You're going to have to pay down if you're going to plan. But for like cash games, lock and load with Christian McCaffrey, right? Dalvin Cook, 7-9 on DraftKings, 8-7 on Fanduel, if I'm doing my math correctly here. Green Bay was 23rd against opposing running backs last year. In the one game he played against Green Bay, he put up a 31. Huge upside. I know there's a lot of talk of what's his state of mind with the contract talks, etc. Dalvin Cook's ready to rock and roll at home in the dome against a run defense, a team that struggles against the run. I like Dalvin Cook quite a bit. I'm going to sprinkle in some Alvin Kamara. It's not my favorite play this week. Tampa Bay is very, very good against the run. Now, he's going to be involved in the passing game, a 17 and a 22 last year against this team. So there's certainly that sort of feel to it, but you're not going to see a ton of goal line carries and everything else. So you need him to get those targets. Austin Eckler, it's another guy, same way, but I like Austin Eckler. He just doesn't have any competition for touches in the running back room. Tyrod Taylor's going to be throwing screen passes and swing passes out to Eckler. He's 7K on DraftKings, 7-7 on FanDuel. Bengals were 24th against opposing running backs last year. I like Austin Eckler, and I like Aaron Jones. So this is where, you're seeing a lot of guys here in the mid-tier that I think are certainly in play. And again, I'm going to have a spread-out player pool week 1 because we kind of got to see how everything works. But Aaron Jones loved this matchup last year. A 28 and a 32 in the 2 games against Minnesota last year. 6-9 on DraftKings. 7-8 on FanDuel. Again, they didn't bring in anybody to help Aaron Rodgers in the passing game, so I think you see Aaron Jones heavily involved in the passing game. You can sign me up for that. Josh Jacobs, to me, is more of a FanDuel play. Carolina gave up the most fantasy points in the league to opposing running backs last year. I think he gets 20, 25 carries. It's just how involved will he be in the passing game, and with DraftKings being a full point per reception, but FanDuel only being a half point per reception, I think he's a better FanDuel play. Now, he is 8,200 on FanDuel, 6-8 on DraftKings. I'm going to have some exposure to Joe Mixon. I'm still monitoring that sort of issue with the migraines, but it's the one weakness of this Chargers defense, if you will, is stopping the run. Now, they're very good against the pass. Joe Mixon's certainly got the upside. I don't think he'll be very heavily owned. Again, you can follow me on Twitter at Dfs Bachelor. I think I'm like 22 Twitter followers away from 5,000. I would love to get there during this video. That would be awesome if you guys could help me out there. And I'll have the information up as soon as I know it will be there on my Twitter feed. Nick Chubb led the league in rushing. The last, 10 or second in the league in rushing, rather. The only problem is, of course, Kareem Hunt is there to share the workload. Baltimore, it was 8th against running backs. It's a good defense. He did have a huge game against Baltimore last year. He had a 42. He also had a 5 at the end of the year. So there's some high risk, high reward with Nick Chubb. Then you get to a guy like Kenyon Drake. Now, the 49ers, number 3 against opposing running backs last year. But Kenyon Drake, in his 2 games against the 49ers, remember, this team's going to run 4 wide with 1 running back. It's going to look a lot like those Houston Oilers run-and-shoot offenses in the early 90s when they had Lorenzo White and the 4 wide receivers, Duncan and Jeffries and Givens, Drew Hill, probably showing my age a little too much. But Kenyon Drake's going to be heavily involved in the passing game. He looked good in the running game. He had a 31 and a 14 in his 2 games against the 49ers. You're getting him at 6'4 on FanDuel, or 6'6 on FanDuel, 6'4 on DraftKings. I could certainly go there. Now here's, maybe where some value opens up. Miles Sanders. Looks like he's going to play. Like the upside. 38 in his last game against Washington last year. He's 6'3 and 6'8. Washington allowed the 3rd most fantasy points in the league to opposing running backs last year. The real question is if he's going to play, and if he doesn't, that opens up some value for a guy like Boston Scott. And we're going to talk about all the value plays. I meant to get a value play only video up, and next week we will have that. There's going to be even more NFL content next week. This week was just so busy with my son starting school and starting the new gig at Sportsbook Review. I ended up just being overwhelmed time-wise, so I think I got a handle on all of that. So next week, the smaller videos, the Millionaire Maker Core 4 and the Salary Savers, those will all be out as well as our normal content. But don't worry, we're going to get to the value plays in this video. So Miles Sanders, again, just got to make sure he's going to have a full workload and what that injury looks like. But I do certainly have interest there. And Chris Carson, again, for me, is a FanDuel play. He's not heavily involved in the passing game. But the Seahawks love to run the football. He's going to get the goal line touches. Carlos Hyde's a little bit banged up, so he should have all the work he can handle as long as he doesn't fumble the ball early. We know Chris Carson tends to have some fumbling issues. 6-2 on DraftKings, again, not overly involved in the passing game, so that worries me on DraftKings. But on FanDuel at 7-2, where it's only half a point per reception, and there's more of a premium on those rushing yards and rushing touchdowns and carries, I like Chris Carson quite a bit. David Montgomery, I actually don't mind. I know he's been dealing with an injury, but he was a full participant in practice yesterday. He's 5'9" on both sides against a Lions team that allowed the fourth most fantasy points in the league to opposing running backs. Now, the concern is, does Tariq Cohen take away a bunch of his touches? If Detroit gets ahead, that's what happens. So there is risk with David Montgomery. I got to wait to see how that 49ers backfield shakes out. I like Mostert. I like the matchup. It's just Jerick McKinnon looks good in camp now. Tevin Coleman's going to be involved, so it's a three-headed monster, which can be concerning. Le'Veon Bell apparently is near a 60-40 workload split with Frank Gore, so that concerns me too. Same with Devin Singletary. I like the upside of Singletary against the Jets. He's 5'4" and 6'3". Again, like even in my season-long drafts, when I drafted Devin Singletary, I drafted Zach Moss because we just have to see what that looks like. So they're tournament plays with upside, but again, there's certainly a risk. Same with Ronald Jones. I think he's involved in the passing game. The Saints were very good against running back, so it's a tournament upside type play only, and it's a DraftKings play for me. You hope that he can get 6 or 7 targets in that passing game out of the backfield, especially if that pass rush is getting to Brady. Maybe he could be sort of like that James White type factor for Tom Brady. So I have some interest there. That's kind of how I like Kareem Hunt as well if I were going to go there. Now, the Detroit running back situation, we just don't know. Will it be Kerryon Johnson, DeAndre Swift, the rookie? They just signed Adrian Peterson, had to put Bo Scarborough on injured reserve. So I'm just staying away from that. A guy like Boston Scott, 4.8 DraftKings, 4.9 FanDuel, could be interesting, especially on FanDuel at 4.9. If Miles Sanders looks like he's going to be limited. We saw this young man. First of all, he put up a 14 in his one game against Washington last year. And we saw him in week, I want to say, was it 16 or 17, where he got all the touches, got 19 carries and 6 targets. He put up a 36. So Boston Scott has upside. If Miles Sanders is limited or doesn't play, there's a nice value option there at running back. And then I just don't think there's anyone else down here. If you want to take a shot on Zach Moss, you think, maybe Devin Singletary fumbles early or gets hurt, I suppose Latavius Murray is sort of the same type of deal. But again, that's very, very risky. One player who I do think has a decent floor just catching balls out of the backfield on DraftKings is Chris Thompson. I mean, I would assume he's their running back on passing downs for Jacksonville, and I think they're going to throw a lot. He's 4K and 4.9, so if you want to get down to the nitty-gritty and try to find a salary saver down here, a guy like Chris Thompson could be interesting at 4,000. That's really it for me at value at running back. Let's go to wide receivers. I need to get a drink of Bailey's and coffee because we're going to talk about the wide receiver cornerback matchups and everything else. This will be the longest and most strenuous segment of the show, obviously dealing with the wide receivers. So one moment, please. Okay, let's get after it. Sorry about that. So, again, I have my top 10 best and worst wide receiver cornerback matchups listed here on Draft Dashboard. Again, that link's in the video description below. 30 days for $1. So let's just start right at the top. Michael Thomas, of course he's in play. And this Tampa Bay secondary allowed the most fantasy points in the league to opposing wide receivers last year. Michael Thomas put up 72 DraftKings points in 2 games against Tampa Bay. They're at home. He's 9K on DraftKings, 8-8 on Fanduel. When you look at his matchup, he's going to line up all over the field, but which means he could see some shadow by Carlton Davis, who, I mean, he gave up 0.32 fantasy points per route ran against, and if they try to put Sean Murphy Bunting or Jamel Dean, it's a plus matchup there too. Plus matchups across the board. Gotta like Michael Thomas. Julio Jones against Seattle. Seattle last year was 15th against opposing wide receivers. Now, I don't mind his matchup, but he's going to see Quentin Dunbar or Shaq Griffin on the outside. They gave up 0.22 and 0.26 fantasy points per route ran against, respectfully, but of course we know about the upside of Julio Jones. One of the best matchups of the weekend, Devonte Adams, 7-3 on DraftKings, 8K on FanDuel. Last year, Minnesota was 24th against opposing wide receivers. Now, Minnesota absolutely revamped their wide receiver core, or their defensive backs. So they got rid of Xavier Rhodes, they got rid of Trey Wayne, so it's going to be a young secondary, good safeties. When you look at the matchup, he's going to see Holton Hill and Jeff Gladney, the rookie, Mike Hughes in the slot, all plus matchups across the board. Love Devonte Adams this week. I even think Allen Lazard could be an interesting value type option. Chris Godwin. I like Chris Godwin more than Mike Evans just because he lines up in the slot more. And we know that Tom Brady likes to go into the slot. Mike Evans is going to be shadowed by Marshawn Lattimore. So Chris Godwin in the slot is going to see a ton of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who gave up 0.26 fantasy points per route ran against last year. Tom Brady's comfortable throwing to players in the slot. We've seen the guys, Edelman, etc. So I think Chris Godwin's the play there. It does look like they're optimistic that Mike Evans will be healthy. So that's certainly something to keep an eye on. Hopkins, I think, is a fine price on DraftKings at 6-8. A lot of short catches, etc. The Niners have a great secondary. They're good at shutting down teams' number one wide receivers. But again, he should be a target monster. I'm a little trepid right now. If you look at his matchup, he's going to line up all over the field. You'll see him in the slot as well. He's going to see Quan Williams and Richard Sherman, 0.18 fantasy points per route ran against for each of them. The better matchup for him's on the outside against Emmanuel Mosley, who also came into his own last year. He gives up 0.30. So tournament upside on DraftKings in that full PPR format. Adam Thielen is just the only wide receiver for Minnesota. I don't love Adam Thielen. I have him sprinkled into some of my lineups just because that 6-7 price and that 6-8 price on FanDuel is really nice. When you look at his matchup, he's going to see Jair Alexander, who did kind of give up some points last year, 0.33 fantasy points per route ran against, and he could be shadowing him. But if he goes into the slot, which Adam Thielen does on 30% of his routes, he's going to see Shandon Sullivan, who was a terrific slot corner last year for Green Bay. So that's where I'm at on that. DJ Moore, it's the same. There's just so many options now, bringing in Robbie Anderson. I do think the upside is there. The Raiders secondary is not very good. 6-6 and 7-1. I could go there when you're looking at that matchup. The wide receiver cornerback matchup for that, you're looking at, he's going to see Damon Arnett, who doesn't even have a stat. Trayvon Mullen, who I guess is kind of the leader of that secondary now. So it's iffy. Tyler Lockett, he and DK Metcalf both. I like the matchup for both of them against this Atlanta secondary. When you look, Metcalf's going to see a ton of Isaiah Oliver over there on the left offensive side of the field, who gave up 0.37 fantasy points per route ran against. Tyler Lockett will see a lot of Darqueze Dennard in the slot. Tyler Lockett lines up in the slot 69% of the time, and Darqueze Dennard was a bright spot for Cincinnati last year, giving up 0.16 fantasy points per route ran against. The matchup favors DK Metcalf. Love DK Metcalf this week. Allen Robinson, I love him too. And I'm fine with Mitchell Trubisky being the quarterback. He put up a 38 in his 2 games last year against Detroit. Again, they allowed the 3rd most fantasy points in the league to opposing wide receivers. He's 6'5 on DraftKings, 7'2 on FanDuel. When you look at his matchup, he's going to see a lot of that rookie Jeff Okudah, and we'll see how he translates to it. Or Desmond Trufant on the other side, Justin Coleman in the middle, 0.43 and 0.37 fantasy points per route ran against. Stephon Diggs, the new weapon in Buffalo, facing a Jet secondary that no longer has Jamal Adams, and he's got one of the better matchups on paper facing the new corner in New York, Pierre Desser, who came over from Indianapolis and gave up 0.40 fantasy points per route ran against last year. So I can definitely get down with Stephon Diggs. Keenan Allen, I don't mind. I just worry about the quarterback scenario. I might have him sprinkle in. I prefer DJ Chark at 6'3", right below him. 6'3" DraftKings, 6'6" on FanDuel. DJ Chark's going to see Xavier Rhodes over there. 0.42 fantasy points per route ran against last year. There is, now if he goes into the slot, Kenny Moore the second has a terrific slot corner. Rock Yassin on the other side isn't terrible either. But when Chark has that Rhodes matchup, I expect him to win it. I expect Jacksonville to throw the ball a ton. So I can certainly go there. Kenny Gallaudet. Son of a bitch, Kenny Gallaudet. I say that because I'm in 2 fantasy football leagues. I drafted Kenny Gallaudet in both, and now he is dealing with a hamstring issue. If he's good to go, sure, he's in play at 6'2". Again, it just is a matter. He had a 29 and a 15 his last 2 games against the Bears last year. The question is, will he be healthy? Again, I'll have that updated on my Twitter timeline as soon as I know. Calvin Ridley, he's going to see that other matchup of Dunbar, etc. for Atlanta. Just the Atlanta passing game, they're going to throw the ball a ton. I know they have Todd Gurley, but they're still going to throw a ton. So Calvin Ridley at 6'1" and 6'6" is certainly in play. Jarvis Landry against Buffalo. He's a PPR guy, so I like him a lot on DraftKings at 5'9". Now again, Cleveland had a good secondary last year. Baltimore had a good secondary last year. So did Cleveland, as a matter of fact. He's going to see Marlon Humphrey in the slot. That's where Jarvis Landry will spend the bulk of his time. Marlon Humphrey, 0.25 fantasy points per route ran against last year. It's just for the PPR upside. I prefer him over Odell Beckham. Honestly, I do. DK Metcalf, we talked about it. I love his price, 5'8" and 6'4". I think you could see a huge game, a huge season from DK Metcalf. One of my favorite young receivers coming in to this year. T.Y. Hilton's is a tournament play only, obviously. New quarterback in Phillip Rivers. We have to see how they gel. He's going to see some of this young corner, C.J. Henderson on the outside, but they still have D.J. Hayden and Trey Herndon. It's not like they're terrible on the secondary, but T.Y. Hilton, we know, has the big play type of upside. And let's get further down in here in some cheaper plays. Marquis Brown. So now this is where we're finally starting to get some salary savings, right? Marquis Brown looks like he's going to play even more snaps this year. Big play upside. Cleveland lost a lot in their secondary. Demarius Randall, etc. It's going to be a matchup, I think, that favors Marquis Brown. He'll see a lot of Denzel Ward, who gave up 0.26 fantasy points per route ran against last year. Didn't have big games against Cleveland, but I like the big play upside at 5'1" and 5'8". I think you can certainly consider Marquis Brown. Henry Ruggs, it looks like he should be the number 1 wideout. He and Hunter Renfro and the other young kid they drafted and Nelson Aguilar. So it's a tournament play only at 5'1". There's some upside there. Even Anthony Miller started to come on last year, and Trubisky was finding him quite a bit in the slot. He's at 5K and 5'5". I could sprinkle some of that in. I think that's a contrarian stack. A guy like Kendrick Bourne, if Deebo Samuel and Ayuk are out, Kendrick Bourne is going to see a ton of snaps in a plus matchup on the outside. Now, you would expect Patrick Peterson to return to his former self, but he lines up on the opposite side of the field than Kendrick Bourne usually does, and Kendrick Bourne spends a lot of time in the slot. So you've got Dre Kirkpatrick, Byron Murphy, who gave up 0.49 and 0.39 fantasy points per route ran against. Patrick Peterson, 0.36. So if he's going to see a bulk of the snaps, which he very well could do with the injuries, Kendrick Bourne could be interesting. Alan Lazard, we talked about it. He's the number 2 receiver. Again, that's a tournament type play only. Deshaun Jackson, 4'9" DraftKings, 5'6" FanDuel. Game 1 last year against Washington, I said this exact same thing. I love the big play upside against his former team. He loves doing that to his former teams, and you're only going to get him healthy for a few games, and right now it looks like some of those weapons for the Eagles aren't going to be healthy, although Jalen Reagor, it looks like, is trending in the right direction. One thing I know, whether it's completed or not, you're going to see some big passing opportunities for Deshaun. He's going to go deep to Deshaun Jackson at least a couple of times, and all you need is for one of them to connect. He's going to see a bunch of Fabian Moreau and Ronald Darby, who give up 0.48 and 0.26. Too cheap, big play upside. Get him while he's healthy. I like Deshaun Jackson. Brashad Perriman should see nice volume. And he was, I remember those numbers from last year were in a Tampa Bay offense where they were throwing the ball a ton. It's a tough secondary. It's a tournament play only. But if he's going to see 7 to 10 targets at 4'9" and 5'7", I'll take it. I don't know why Cole Beasley's marked. I will pass on that. Hunter Renfro. Yeah, look, Derek Carr. He became one of Derek Carr's favorite targets last year. Nine targets in each of the last 2 games. A 27 and a 25. He's 4'5" and 5'2". I think Hunter Renfro is certainly in play on a slate where there's not a ton of cheap value. Preston Williams, Brandon Ayuk, both questionable. You've got Larry Fitz down there. We'll have to see how he fits in now with the addition of DeAndre Hopkins. So there's a lot. I was making sure my microphone was on. God, that would have been a disaster. N'Keal Harry could be an interesting tournament option. I know there's some people excited about him. We just got to see what Cam Newton's arm looks like. Jalen Reagor, we talked about it. Looks like he could be in line to make his NFL debut when it was looking iffy just a few weeks ago. If not, and then we got some Tampa Bay guys. So these were more for if. Now, B.C. Johnson's going to be the number 2 receiver in Minnesota, but even when he was that last year, he didn't put up huge numbers. But Scotty Miller in the slot for Tom Brady, kind of that Julian Edelman type, quick, shifty, smaller guy. He's 4K and 4.5. Now, Mike Evans looks like he's going to play, so that'll, he and Justin Watson will probably both get some time in the slot, but I think you could take a late round flyer on that. If you look at the Scotty Miller option, he was kind of equal across the board. He could see some Janoris Jenkins, some Gardner Johnson. Again, you'll have Marshawn Lattimore probably locked up on Mike Evans in a shadow situation. So I could consider that as well. I just had Watson marked in case Evans wasn't going to play. I think that is it. I don't think I forgot anyone down here in terms of super cheap. Now, I'm sure someone will fly off the board and do something crazy, but for now, there's the wide receivers with the wide receiver cornerback matchups. Okay, let's get to the tight ends. So at tight end, of course, George Kittle, we talked about it. Arizona was dreadful, just historically dreadful last year against opposing tight ends. It's going to be hard to fit him in. I generally like to pay down at tight end, 7.2 and 8K. Of course, George Kittle's in play, had a 20 in his one game against Arizona. Mark Andrews should see a ton more snaps this year. Cleveland allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing tight ends last year. No Hayden Hurst this year means we should see, like last year, he was only on the field for 41% of the snaps, so it was really frustrating. But he was also Lamar Jackson's favorite red zone target. He's 7.4 Fanduel, 6K Draftkings. I do like Mark Andrews. Darren Waller, we talked about all the wide receiver issues over there in Las Vegas. Just young group. We don't, they lost Tyrell Williams, their number 1 receiver, to IR. Darren Waller had some big games and he had some bad games, but when he's rolling, he's got that 25-point upside at 5'9 and 6'9. I could go there. Zach Ertz, of course, against Washington, a 10 and a 17 in his 2 games last year. He's at 5'8 and 6'7. I don't mind that. Jared Cook against Tampa, who were 25th against opposing tight ends. Some good tight end matchups week 1. Getting some nice tight ends. He had a 14 and 11 in those 2 games. I don't mind Jared Cook. And then, look, I know everyone wants to play Gronk. We'll have to see what we get. Now, he's always averaged more than 10 fantasy points every week that he plays. So I'll have some tournament exposure to him. I think he's going to be higher owned than he should be, but I'll have some sprinkles of him. And then my favorite tight end, saving some money. This is my dude this week. I love Hayden Hurst, replacing Austin Hooper in that Atlanta passing game offense. 4-3 on DraftKings, 5-3 on FanDuel. Seattle allowed the 2nd most fantasy points, 3rd most fantasy points rather, in the league to opposing tight ends, 30th in the league. He's going to step into that Austin Hooper role when you have Seattle trying to focus all their energy stopping Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones. I think Hayden Hurst sees a ton of targets this year. Don't let me down this week, Hayden Hurst. I like him a lot at 4-3. And if you're looking for some guys way down here with some upside, who could make a splash, guys like Dan Arnold should be the starting tight end in Arizona. He's at 3-5 and 4-2. Ian Thomas should be the starter there in Carolina. He's 3-4. And then 5-1 on FanDuel. I like that price way more on DraftKings at 3-4. And that's probably it for me at tight end. Let's get to the defenses. So, Buffalo against the Jets, of course. Lego policeman Sam Darnold could be a disaster in New York. Gotta love that. I love the Eagles against Washington. I think Dwayne Haskins struggles against that secondary and that pass rush. Anytime Dwayne Haskins played last year, I played the defense against him. Got some turnovers, some pick sixes, 3-6 and 4-5. I like that. 49ers are in play-ish. I worry a little bit about that Arizona offense. I think I would prefer to go to maybe a team like the Patriots at 3-2. Now, they don't have Patrick Chung anymore, Dante Hightower, etc., but they still have shutdown corners, They're gonna be the best schemed defense in the league. They have obviously a brilliant defensive mind in Bill Belichick, and we've seen it. If Ryan Fitzpatrick gets off on the wrong foot, it could get real ugly in a hurry. So I do like the Patriots defense. The Ravens against Cleveland, it's the same thing. Especially if this is like a closer type game late in the game and Baker Mayfield's trying to drive down. You could easily see a pick six there. There's pick six upside. 3-1 DraftKings. Now they're 4-8 on Fanduel. So you can see they're one of the more expensive defenses on Fanduel, and they're a little bit cheaper here on DraftKings. The Colts versus Jacksonville, absolutely. Now, I like the Jacksonville offense probably a little bit more than some people. But, again, the Colts improved their defense astronomically by adding DeForest Buckner. $3K and $3.7. I think that's a nice price. I love the Chargers defense against the Bengals. $2,800 on DraftKings, $4.2 on FanDuel. I think the Chargers are a nice salary saver on the defensive side for us. And then if you're really looking at some teams down here, like, can I just pay super cheap and get a contrarian type play? What about Miami at $2K against the New England offense? What do we know what we're getting out of the New England offense? We don't, but I can tell you what we're getting out of the Dolphins defense, and that's probably the best 1-2 cornerback tandem in the league in Xavier Howard and Byron Jones. So if the Dolphins can stop the run in this game, they could be an interesting defense at 2,000 and 3.5 all the way down there at 2K. I'm going to have some sprinkles of that Miami defense and be a little contrarian. Again, we're trying to win $1 million. So that's our final look at everything. Again, you can get access to this tool and my player pool as it adjusts throughout the week and the weekend. You can click that link in the video description below. You can try Draft Dashboard for 30 days for $1. When you do, how you find my player pool is you click on your watched players over here as you've gone through and watched some players. Then you'll see a blue box at the top that says Watch DFS Bachelor's Picks, as well as a timestamp in Eastern Time when I've last updated them. So that lets you know if I've gotten my player pool adjusted since news comes out, etc. Then you can use it in the lineup optimizer, the mass lineup generator, generate 100 lineups, set your exposure. If you have a guy in a bunch of lineups and then they get late scratched, during kickoff, you can upload your lineups from FanDuel DraftKings, load them into the late swap optimizer, and re-optimize and get them back in. So we'll make a sample lineup on each site. So what we got here, like an Eagle stack. Oh, there's just Sean Jackson, Hayden Hurst, Allen Robinson, Renfro, and Kenny Gallaudet. We just don't know, he and Miles Sanders, how healthy they are going to be. So maybe I could get to a guy like Devonte Adams and save a little bit from Miles Sanders, who, again, we're waiting to find out how healthy he is going to be. I didn't mean to click what I clicked. Guy like Austin Eckler, then maybe we can come down here and save on the defensive end, get down to the Chargers at 28. So what do we need to save here? 500. So we need to save 500. We got Hunter Renfro in here, so it's probably a situation where we got to save at the wide receiver position, even though I like Allen Robinson, and get down into this 5K range. DK Metcalf right there. I think that's a solid lineup. Again, I'm not saying lock this in. There's lots of different ways you could go. I like Josh Allen too. I like Carson Wentz. Allen, Jones, Eckler, Adams, Renfro, Metcalf, Hurst, Deshaun Jackson, Chargers D. I think that's solid. Again, it's just kind of showing you how it works. Over here on FanDuel, let's see what it gives us. You can use my player pool to generate your lineups. Use your own. Teddy Bridgewater lineup. I love it. We won't get that crazy for these purposes for you guys. What about Gardner Minshew down there at 6'7"? Let's make a Lamar Jackson lineup so we could see just how difficult that can be to make there's no way we'll get Michael Thomas in, but we will go for a guy like Marquis Brown. There he is. We got DJ Moore, Metcalf. Let's play some DJ Chark. Get some salary savings here. There's Kenyon Drake we can throw in the. Look at that. So now we got David Montgomery. Do we want to go there? We could get Devin Singletary. There's Raheem Mostert. Again, click the link. Try it for 30 days for $1. Create your own lineups. Compare your player pool to mine, etc. Don't forget to check out Overlay DFS and their new matchup page. It's a lot of fun over at overlaydfs.com. A big thank you again to our guys from TRA Tax Relief Advocates. Again, that phone number, 1-800-411-9633. Get all your tax situation sorted out. Don't forget to join me live at Sportsbook Review. That link will be in the video description as well. So make sure you click that arrow. Check out everything in the video description. The cash game optimizers are up and running right now. Lots and lots of good stuff. The Young Ali's new album, the young man, the dude, my brother behind the beautiful intro that we have for this show. His new album's out. So check all of that out. Congratulations again to our winner, Net Guru Inc. Hit me up on Twitter and let's get that PayPal winnings to you. Don't forget, like the video, subscribe, leave a comment, be part of it. Cheers to you all. May the fantasy gods be with you all. Thank you all again so much. Good luck this weekend. Football is back, baby. Goodbye, folks.